Before law, before kings, before the word before meant anything, there is chaos. Not noise, not a battle, but a yawning openness, a gap, a fertile absence. Greek myth starts by telling you something uncomfortable and honest. Reality doesn't arrive as a perfectly made machine. It congeals. From a formless potential, things start choosing to be themselves. Gaia arises, earth as ground, not merely dirt. She is surface and stability, a platform that invites stories to stand up. With her Tartaros the cavernous elsewhere, that bottomless beneath where limits are enforced and cosmic mistakes go to cool off forever. Eros too appears early, less acute archer and more a gravity of desire, the principle that pulls separate things into pattern. If chaos is the blank page, Eros is the ink that insists on writing. Gaia, self-sufficient, generates the mountains and the swelling sea. But she also births Ouranos, sky, vault, pressure dome. He is not a gentle canopy. He is weight. He lies over Gaia so completely that nothing can properly move. It's the first political problem in myth. The new world is rich with potential, but its roof won't stop pressing down. They have children anyway, titans, vast personifications of elemental forces and clockwork cycles. Oceanos, the encircling stream, Hyperion and Theia, radiance and sight, Koios and Phoebe, axis and brightness of thought. Rhea and Themis, nurture and right order, Iapetus, maker, boundary crosser, and Kronos, whose sickle will cut history open. Beneath the Titan generation, Gaia and Ouranos also produce the Cyclopes, one-eyed intensities of craft and lightning, and the Hecatomb chairs, hundred-handed impossibilities built for siege and storm. Ouranos, threatened by what strength might become, shoves these children into Gaia again, a metaphysical suffocation. The surface mother becomes a prison, and creation learns a bitter rule: power that fears succession always buries the future alive. Gaia refuses to accept it. She crafts a serrated sickle from unyielding adamant, and begs her children for the nerve to use it. Only Kronos steps forward. In a night that turns the cosmos, he hides in ambush, and when Ouranos descends to press the world into obedience again, Kronos cuts. The sky bleeds stars. The severed pieces scatter from blood spatter on earth. Furies and giants sprout vengeance and instability as karmic after effects. From sea foam that gathers around the cast-off parts, Aphrodite rises, beauty as a shockwave from violence. Desire born alongside the end of a tyranny. Creation is not clean. It never was. Power passes, but harmony doesn't just appear because the names on the door change. Kronos becomes the ruler, and he does what all insecure rulers do. He looks at prophecy. He hears that one of his own children will depose him, and he mistakes consumption for control. One by one, as Rhea gives birth, he swallows the newborns whole. Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, Poseidon, each becomes a nervous weight inside Kronos' body politic. Time for Kronos is time with teeth, tries to eat its consequences. Rhea, desperate, does what mothers in myth do best. She innovates when Zeus is born. She hides him in a mountain cave, handing Kronos a swaddled stone instead. He gulps down the decoy, and the tyranny of digestion continues, oblivious to its own blind spot. Meanwhile, in the cave, call it Ida or Dicty, depending on your local priest, nurses, nymphs, and noisy guardians drown a baby's cries with rhythmic clash and dance. The point is practical. Noise can be protection. Culture can be camouflage. While the hidden child grows, the cosmos breathes. The Titans run the visible world, tide, seasons, dawn and dusk, well enough. But good administration without moral security is just delay. Gaia and Rhea raise a future that will challenge the habit of swallowing problems instead of solving them. That future is named Zeus, and whatever you think of him later, his storms, his infidelities, his iron insistence on order, here he is the promise that a better technology of rule can exist. Zeus comes of age, and the first move is not lightning, it's strategy. He returns disguised, offers service to the regime that wants him dead, and works from inside the machine. With Metis' cunning thought, he exploits Kronos' weakness not with a blade, but with a purge. An emetic potion does the work. A sword cannot. Kronos empties his stomach of the gods he tried to erase. The swallowed children are intact, scraped by acid perhaps, but alive, because myth, unlike physics, lets what is devoured return unchanged, if the story needs them back. Hera, Hestia, Demeter, Poseidon, Hades, siblings restored, stand with Zeus. The family is not a democracy. It's a coalition with a mission. Replace a paranoid present with a durable future. And they understand the next principle. You don't win a cosmic war with vibes. You need logistics, alliances, and the right weapons. So Zeus does what Uranos and Kronos both refuse to do. He frees the dangerous. He unshackles the Cyclopes and Hecatoncheires from Tartaros, proving a ruthlessly simple point. Repression wastes strength. Liberation can weaponize it. The Cyclopes repay him by forging the thunderbolt for Zeus, the trident for Poseidon, and the helm of shadow for Hades. These are not just cool items, they're constitutional technologies. Lightning enforces sky law. The trident asserts dominion over changeable waters. The helm gives invisibility, the right to move unobserved where raw force cannot. With gifts armed and allies grimly smiling, the new gods march toward the single fight that makes them rulers or makes them ash. It will span 10 years of thunder and rockfall. It will shake the map of where above ends and below begins. The Titanomachy is coming, but pause here and notice the Greek mind's ferocious honesty about power transfer. Creation requires rupture. Every regime invents its rationalizations. Survival favors those who can use what their enemies fear. We started with chaos and watched form condense, watched power move from sky to time to strategy. None of this is nice. It is, however, coherent. In Greek myth, order isn't the absence of threat. It's the skill of binding threat into structure, of turning monstrous potential into managed energy. Gaia's sickle, Rhea's ruse, Metis' medicine, these are the tools of a civilization that knows the difference between crushing the future and shaping it. By the end of this first movement, the board is set. The swallowed are returned, the hidden is revealed. The old order has a stomachache it can't explain away, and somewhere in the dark, the 100-handed flex, ready to pull mountains. Call it an interregnum carved into stone. After the sky is cut and the blood cools, Kronos stands up with the sickle in his hand and claims the throne with the calm of someone who thinks the future is solved because the past has been punished. This is the Titan Age, immense forces wearing the masks of stability. If Oryganos was pressure without movement, Kronos is movement without trust, time that keeps flowing but never feels safe. The Titan roster is not a family so much as a continental shelf of powers. Oceanos, who girdles the world in a single stream too wide for maps. Tethys, fertile surge, and the mothering of rivers, each river a god with personality, each spring a local oath. Hyperion and Thea give the world glare, and seeing from them come Helios, the sun's steady chariot, Selene, the moon's measured melancholies, and rosy-fingered Eos, dawn, who opens the day like a curtain. Koios and Phoebid concentrate thought and its luminous aim. Their line will polish destiny into words at Delphi. Iapetos broods at the edge, where making becomes a risk. From him a clan of consequences, Prometheus the forethinker, Epimetheus the afterthinker, Atlas the bearer, Menuetos the hot-headed loser of lightning roulette. Themis embodies right order as a pattern, not yet law, a geometry of what fits. Rhea is nurture and continuity, the one who keeps a household alive while the politics argues. Under Kronos, the world works. In the way a mill works when you keep feeding it grain, it turns. Seasons arrive, tides obey their shepherds, dawn shows up even when everyone had a bad night. People later will call it a golden age, not because Kronos was a cuddly king, but because the world hadn't yet learned fear in the bone. Mortals, when they finally show up, will mythologize this era the way adults mythologize childhood, remembering ease, filtering out the parts where someone big and anxious swallowed every threat. The Titan's greatness is scale, not subtlety. Oceanos doesn't need treaties. He is a border by existing. Hyperion's children don't negotiate light, they radiate. Atlas does not discuss logistics. He carries the sky. This is power before law, functions that happen because the cosmos is large and committed to being itself. If you want metaphor, imagine a city run by the utilities: water, power, roads, time, essential, relentless, impersonal. Things function. You don't call it justice when the streetlights turn on, you call it expected. But Kronos was not hired to keep the lights on. He was made king by cutting down a tyrant, and a prophecy dogs him from the minute the bloodstain dries. One of your children will do to you what you did to your father. That line is a fuse buried in the foundation. Kronos hears it and chooses the oldest authoritarian trick: control the nursery. Rhea, dutiful and tender, brings him child after child. He swallows them, not out of appetite, but out of panic disguised as decisiveness. Hestia goes down first, half fire, swallowed. The home center forced to live in the dark. Demeter grain seasons, the argument for continuity damned in his stomach. Hera, sovereignty and marriage, consumed because even alliances make him nervous. Hades, boundary of death, taken inside an irony so large it almost laughs. Poseidon sees will, closed over by the same mouth that dethroned the sky. Let's not be poetic about it. This is the habit of every regime that fears succession. Talent is not promoted, it is smothered. The future is not mentored, it is jailed. The Titan Age teaches the first Greek civic lesson. When power fears renewal, it chooses digestion. The misses can set patterns forever, but without trust, those patterns are taped over the mouthpiece of history. Around the throne room, the other Titans calibrate their positions. Oceanos, enormous and old, watches currents more than courts. Later traditions say he sits out the great war that's coming, not out of cowardice, but because encircling things is different from conquering them. The rivers and nymphs multiply under Tethys' patient governance, and the world's aquifers become a map of obligations. You don't foul what you drink from. Hyperion's brood keep their schedules with pitiless grace. Even when kings scheme, dawn still lifts her pink hands. Corio's line, the thinking brightness, leans futureward. Phoebe will inherit the Delphic seat that becomes the god's nervous system for interpreting fate. Iapetus' sons grow into the roles that will make them most famous and most punished. Prometheus learns where fire hides and what it can cost. Epitheus forgets to plan and will sign for a delivery the world isn't ready for. Atlas lifts and learns what endurance means when escape dies. Menurios rushes at thunderbolt speed toward exactly the kind of end you expect, when pride refuses to read the room. Is it a golden age? Yes, in the way a massive dam makes a valley predictable. The air is clean, the day is long, the harvest cycles do what they are told. But underneath, Rhea cries. Her children, the very logic of the world's future, home, grain, union, boundary, sea, are muffled into the stomach of a king who can't imagine succession as anything but assassination. The Zimis, goddess of right order, keeps announcing what ought to be. It does not make the nursery empty itself. The gap between ought and is becomes the Titan signature. Meanwhile, memory grows teeth. Mnemosyne, memory given a goddess's dignity, takes Zeus when he arrives as future lover, and will later birth the Muses. But even before that, memory is the first insurgent technology. You can't hold down a cosmos that remembers what it could be. Villagers pass dusk songs about stars. Priests write quiet notes about what prophecy said versus what happened. The wordless creatures of myth, the cyclopes chained in Tartaros, the hundred-handed brothers locked where sound refuses to carry, remember the vibration of freedom like bodies. Remember a tune. Mnemosyne is not nostalgia. She is a weapon that makes repetition unsatisfying. The Titan Age also drafts the rules that will later become sacred law once Zeus wins. Hospitality, Senior, doesn't show up as a statute yet, it shows up as practice. You treat the stranger well because the world is bigger than your fence and you don't know which spring you'll need next. Oath-making by the waters of Styx begins as a terrifying custom. Later it will be court procedure. Sacrifices happen too, not because Kronos is a sentimental eater, but because offering and exchange keep the giant impersonal forces neighborly. Burnt thigh bones wrapped in fat are not cuisine. They are messaging, we remember you. World-scale utilities are more cooperative when soothed by ritual than when nagged by petitions. Inside this functioning but afraid cosmos, two stories start to curve toward each other. One is Rhea's grief turning into strategy. The other is Prometheus's curiosity turning into theft. Rhea, advised by Gaia, finds a mountain and midwives a deception. The stone wrapped like a baby is not merely a prank, it's the first mythic parody of a state ceremony. Kronos performs kingship by swallowing. Rhea performs motherhood by smuggling. Power isn't just what you hold, it's what you successfully pretend to do while arranging for something else to happen. When Zeus is hidden in Crete, whether nursed by Amalthea the goat or by fertile nymphs, whether guarded by Curedes clashing spear on shield, so the cries sound like ritual music, the point is the same. Culture can hide insurgency inside choreography. You beat paranoia by teaching it a dance. Prometheus watches. He is Iapetus' son, which means he lives at the edge, where making turns into risk and foresight learns it can be lonely. He likes humans, or, more precisely, he likes the idea that mind could be distributed more widely. When the gods and humans bargain at Mecone over who gets what portion of sacrifice, Prometheus arranges piles so that glitter and smell go one way, nutrition the other. The gods choose the shiny pile of bones. Mortals get meat. Trickery, sure, but also the beginning of a political consensus. Appearances are a tax. The powerful often pay gladly to keep the useful off their desk. The seed of divine resentment is planted here. It will grow into Pandora, into fire stolen back, into chains, and an eagle that believes itself a health inspector. Hold that thought, fire jars, hope boxed like a stubborn last light. We'll get there. For now, the Titan Age is the stage on which Zeus learns that order without mercy rots, and Prometheus learns that empathy without caution bleeds. Helios circles, marking days that look stable. Selene rises, the night soft accountant. Helios opens the morning like a fresh opportunity and watches it become the same day again. The world is running, but no child's laughter echoes in Kronos' halls. He is king of a quiet house. Quiet is not peace. It is what you hear before collapse. If you're tempted to romanticize Kronos' era because poets later call it golden, remember what the Greeks insist on over and over: gold is soft. It shines, but it bends. Without law, that is, without agreed constraints and enforceable recourse, power feeds on what it fears. The sickle that made Kronos king hangs like a moral guillotine over every cradle. The essential difference between utility and justice is coming, and the cosmos is holding its breath. When Zeus finally arrives at the threshold of his own story, he does not come as a meteor. He comes as a boy who learned to be silent among symbols, as a conspirator who learned medicine before he learned thunder. Metis' cunning counsel, the mind's angle grinder, stands beside him, sharpening plans. The potion that makes Kronos vomit is both cure and indictment. It cures a stomach. It indicts a system that imagines swallowing as governance. The regurgitated gods stumble out slick and furious, adults that remember being infants, brothers and sisters who were once functions and now will be offices. The Titan Age could have pivoted right there. Kronos could have made a deal. Themis could have drafted charters. Oceanos could have brokered peace. But regimes that eat their future don't trust compromise. They believe surrender is the only language because it is the only one they taught. And so the quarrel organizes itself into a war, 10 years long, so the poets say, the length of a siege, required to convince even stone that power needs allies. Titans take the mountains, gods learn the valleys, Atlas warms up his shoulders. The Cyclops hammer in the echoing dark, turning gratitude into weapons. The 100-handed brothers flex and grin, because finally the cosmos is asking them to do what they were built for. So ends the age of power before law, not with a collapse of the utilities, but with their recognition that scale alone does not make a world humane. The next age will start with a courtroom made of thunder and end with borders that know their names. But first, the sky is going to catch fire, and the mountains are going to move as if they had opinions. Every revolution starts with a baby. The regime refused to see. Zeus is not born into safety. He's born into a problem that eats its young. Rhea knows this, Gaia knows this, and together they turn maternity into counterintelligence. The plan is blunt but brilliant: misdirect the tyrant, hide the heir, and raise him inside a noise so rhythmic, even paranoia hears only ritual. On the day Kronos expects to swallow another infant, Rhea hands him a swaddled stone, the Omphalos mimic, wrapped tight in maternal theatre. He gulps it down, satisfied, while out beyond the corridors of power, a cave in Crete opens its mouth to a colder, bolder truth. Call the mountain Dictys or Ida. The detail is regional, the tactic universal. The Curetes, dancers, drummers, shield clashers, build a sonic decoy. Their choreography is not art for art's sake, it is acoustic camouflage. Bronze on bronze, heel on rock, chant on wind. Every strike a syllable in the sentence. Nothing to hear here. That's how you hide a future. You turn surveillance into applause. Zeus's cradle is the earth's bone and goat's milk. Amalthea, whether goat or nymph of the goat, feeds him with a tenderness that is already strategy. From her horn, later the cornucopia, flows the image of supply lines secured. Even as a child, Zeus learns the quiet doctrine of sustainable rule. Famine makes subjects brittle. Abundance makes them predictable. Between feedings he is taught silence, taught patience, taught that thunder is useless if you blow the storm too soon. Crete is a finishing school for insurgents. The nymphs Adrastea and Ida tend him with the discipline of people who understand that a lullaby can be a weapon if it buys one more minute of growth. He climbs the cave walls as if memorizing future sky. He watches shepherds and learns the economy of herds, watches storms roll in from the sea, and learns you can announce yourself across horizons without moving an inch. The boy is a barometer. Every change in pressure writes a note on his bones. When he's strong enough to leave the cave, he doesn't march on the palace like a folk hero. He embeds, disguised, polite. He walks into the system that wants him erased and offers service. That's not cowardice, that's statecraft. He refuses the theatrics of premature confrontation and chooses leverage instead. And this is where Metis enters, a mind so precise the Greeks personified it. Not wisdom as a library, but wisdom as a cutting edge, situational, adaptive, allergic to vanity. Metis is the first cabinet appointment of Olympus, and she prescribes a cure that looks like a crime: make time vomit. The potion is pharmacology and philosophy at once. Kronos' reign is digestion as governance, swallow threats, control outcomes, deny succession. Metis brews the antithesis. The emetic strips time of its stolen future. When the moment comes, Zeus doesn't roar. He administers, Kronos heaves, and the swallowed gods return whole. Hestia like a pilot light catching, Demeter with seasons clenched in her fists, Hera standing as if the word consort had sharp corners, Hades with shadow in his pupils, but clarity in his ledger, Poseidon with the sea's unsmiling patience. They emerge not as infants but as grown functions with memories, which is another way of saying they emerge already motivated. This is the hinge. A family becomes a faction becomes a program, but programs need tools and alliances, and Zeus does what his predecessors would not. He frees the dangerous down in Tartarus, where distance becomes a punishment and sound slows to a crawl. The Cyclopes blink into a light they helped design but were never allowed to aim. He unshackles them. Gratitude in myth isn't sentimental, it's industrial. The Cyclopes repay him with 3 constitutional technologies: the Thunderbolt, to fix sky law; the Trident, to domesticate water's revolt; the Helm of Invisibility, to make presence optional when power needs to pass unseen. These are not toys, they're operating principles in metal and myth. Then come the Hecaton chairs, the 100-handed brothers built like siege engines with a pulse. Arenas chained them because he feared their capacity. Kronos forgot them because denial is lazy. Zeus releases them because he intends to govern reality, not posture over it. They are delighted in the way only neglected excellence is delighted when finally asked to do the job it was born for. Think of them as logistics at divine scale. When mountains need to move, you don't negotiate, you deploy. With siblings recovered, makers empowered, and engines awakened, Zeus begins assembling the thing that will outlast any single victory. Olympus as an institution. Don't picture a slapdash camp of rebels. Picture a cabinet table in the clouds, portfolios, jurisdictions, scopes. Hera is not just wife. She is architecture for legitimacy, the guarantor that unions divine and civic mean something binding. Poseidon is not just ocean. He is change management across a domain that never stops moving. Hades is not just death. He is property law, boundaries, inheritance, the invisible infrastructure that keeps greed from pretending to be immortality. Hestia stays at the center, small and absolute, half-fire as the stability every other office presupposes. Demeter secures the seasons, no bread, no polis. Apollo and Artemis are on the horizon, but their adult mandates, measure, music, clarity, limit, hunt, threshold, protection are already implicit in the way the new order thinks. Athena is still inside Zeus. Literally, if you follow the version where Metis is swallowed, so wisdom can be internalized and later born armored. That detail isn't a parlor trick, it's a doctrine. Council should be so close to power, it can argue from behind the eyes. Zeus also begins the most delicate work any regime ever attempts, making friends of forces that don't need friends. He talks to rivers as if they were senators. He treats mountains like constituency groups. He learns to accept that the sun and moon have schedules too sacred to politicize. He doesn't abolish the Titans' utilities. He integrates them into a law. That's the upgrade from power to order. Persuasion where possible, compulsion where necessary, and rituals everywhere to keep both from corroding. But no one wins a cosmos with HR. Kronos rallies the Titans. Old loyalties crystallize. Atlas rolls his neck, like a man warming up to carry things forever. Iapetos brood split between foresight and fury. Oceanos watches, encircling but non-committal, because borders don't pick sides, they enforce them. The mist still knows what ought to be. The battlefield is where ought is tested. One more move before the storm. Zeus rehearses justice. The first trials are small. Petty disputes among minor gods, quarrels among nymphs, arguments over offerings. Lightning is kept in its sheath, while the habit of judgment is learned. That's not theatrics. That's training a reflex. If your only tool is a thunderbolt, every problem looks like a tree to burn. The future king is teaching himself that restraint is a weapon too. So Olympus is forged not as a fort, but as a framework, a place where domains are defined, oaths will be backed by Styx itself, and sanctuary matters. The Curities' clangor is replaced by a steadier music, hymns that double as policy. The baby is now a strategist. The strategist is about to become a general. 10 years of war. Wait like a locked door. Zeus has assembled keys, siblings, freedmakers, 100-handed leverage, a constitutional imagination, and a willingness to use all of it. Next comes the trial by avalanche, the Titanomachy, where mountains will be thrown like javelins, and the air itself will learn what verdict means. Call it what it was, a system update executed with hammers. For 10 years the world stopped being picturesque and learned the sound of purpose, stone torn loose, air split by iron seas standing up in walls because someone with a trident told them to. The Titanomachy is not a duel. It's a decade-long audit where reality is asked whether it prefers raw function or accountable order. The fronts are simple on a map and brutal underfoot. On one side, Mount Othrys, the Titans' command, old mass wearing the confidence of precedent. On the other, Olympus, new, bright, and frankly a bit cocky, home to a coalition that believes law can be engineered. Between them sit valleys where shepherds once counted lambs and now count thunderbolts. The earth, Gaia, does not pick a side, but she will not forgive waste. The sky, Ouranos, has opinions, but after being cut, once he prefers to keep them abstract. Zeus starts the war like a statesman, who knows logistics, when what speeches start. He arranges supply lines. Demeter runs grain, as if harvests were troop morale. They are. Hestia keeps campfires steady, a quiet miracle when weather is a battlefield. Hermes, still young, already impossible, moves messages faster than rumor. Poseidon maps the coastlines, not as drawings, but as lever arms. He can lift harbors if he needs to. Hades is not on the front lines. He does something colder. He inventories consequences. The dead will come. Systems must be ready. Order doesn't start after victory. It starts when you decide what to do with loss. The Titans, for their part, bring size and certainty. Hyperion's light stretches the field, so there are no surprises at dawn. The enemy can't hide behind night, because Eos opens the curtain on schedule. Selene softens the dark, but never grants cover. There is no off switch for celestial utilities. Oceanus refuses to be drafted. Encircling remains his job. Atlas is all in from day one. Every muscle a contract with weight. Iapetus's line splits. Prometheus is a problem solver with a conscience. Menuasios is a missile without one. Themis would prefer a treaty. She gets a timetable of sorties. The first year teaches everyone how to bleed efficiently. Zeus tries to win with speed. Lightning barrages designed to overload Titan reflexes. It works until it doesn't. Raw scale absorbs a lot of lesson. Titans answer by throwing mountains. The hackathon chairs respond with laughter. The delighted laughter of a craftsperson finally given adequate materials. You throw a mountain, we throw 5. Briareos, Cottos, and Gyges. Grip peaks like athletes rotating a discus. Ranges become ammunition. Valleys newborn from impact will later grow wines. People praise at banquets where no one mentions that vintage's origin story collateral. Years 2 through 4 look like stalemate to anyone who insists on tracking only territory. That's the wrong metric. The Olympian advantage is compounding coordination. Zeus doesn't just hurl thunder, he iterates. Apollo begins to tune the cadence of strikes. He isn't formally seated yet, but music and measure have a way of joining crucial work early. Athena, if she's already hammered out of Zeus's skull by now, in your preferred version brings battlefield geometry, turning hills into hinge points and rivers into choke valves. Even if she isn't born yet, the mindset she personifies is present, cunning that respects physics. On Othrys, Cronus tries to replay the move that made him king decisive violence, but sickles make poor general staff. He orders frontal assaults built on the assumption that yesterday's strength should work today. It does, until Metis inside Zeus or advising beside him, choose your theology, teaches the coalition to weaponize the Titan's predictability. False retreats lure the heavy hitters downhill. Poseidon floods the ravines. Hecaton sharers seal the exits with a new rockfall. If you're looking for the moment when power realizes its fighting strategy, that's one of them. By year 5, the Cyclopes have turned gratitude into an arms industry. Thunderbolts become less like weather and more like verdicts. The trident evolves from spear to switchboard. Poseidon can now throw a wave across a battlefield with the precision of a thrown knife. Hades' helm of invisibility enables raids that rewrite morale. Commanders vanish mid-command. Supply chiefs find their ledgers corrected by a hand they cannot see. Invisibility isn't romance here. It's governance, the ability to act without spectacle when spectacle would warn the guilty. Titans adapt, minimally. They're not stupid, they're invested. Coeus and Phoebe try intelligence, probing, subterfuge, sabotage of oracle lines, but Delphic clarity already leans Olympian, and truth, once tasted, keeps its own loyalties. Themis still insists that what ought to be will outlast what is. She's right, but wars are biographies of timing. Mid-war, Typhon appears not a titan, but a challenge so obscene it briefly makes sides irrelevant. Imagine a storm given fingers, a mountain with a tongue of fire, a body that manufactures geography by accident. Typhon is the test of whether Zeus's kingship is a mood or a mandate. The first encounter is ugly. Tendons stripped, thunderbolts scattered, retreat that tastes like iron. Call it year 6, or simply the day Olympus learned humility. Then comes the counter, the part Greek myth underlines in thick ink. Order fails, regroups, and returns smarter. With Athena's angles, Hermes' timing, Apollo's measures, and the Cyclopes pushing their furnaces into overtime, Zeus pins Typhon under Etna like a paperweight on chaos. Not dead, repressed and managed. This is the doctrine. Evil isn't always annihilated. Sometimes it's given a volcano to shout through. The ground will grumble for the rest of time, and farmers will have to live with that. Civilization is compromise with leftover monsters. Years 7 and 8 collapse Titan morale. The hackathon cherries start throwing faster than the Titans can aim. Hera builds alliance discipline like a spine. Deserters find no welcome on Olympus, but loyal allies never eat alone. Demeter weaponizes patience, starving Titan foraging parties without torching fields needed for tomorrow's peace. Even Ares, if you like him present this early, learns that rage is a tool, not a policy. The Olympian camp stops celebrating wins at dusk and starts writing procedures. You can feel the constitution accreting in the margins of after-action reports. On Othyres, fissures widen. Rhea's grief has matured into a cold refusal to enable some Titans quietly sit down and refuse further orders. Not treason fatigue. The Golden Age was gold-plated habit. The war has exposed how soft it always was. Atlas eyes the horizon and knows he's about to meet his life's work. The last 2 years aren't cinematic. They're administrative brutality. Zeus opens the war's endgame with a surge that feels like weather growing a will. 300-handed barrages pin Titan lines. Poseidon's quakes dislodge Othyres' pride from its foundations. Lightning walks down ridgelines like a judge reading names. Kronos breaks last. He was never a strategist, only a terrifying precedent. The sickle that once made him king clatters on stone, and in that noise you can hear a regime discovering it has no sentences left to say. Then comes the choice that separates conquerors from founders. What to do with defeated powers. Zeus doesn't kill the Titans wholesale. Myth rarely pretends history is that clean. He incarcerates them in Tartaros, the metaphysical maximum security where distance itself is the lock, and he doesn't leave the gate to chance. The hecaton sharers become wardens, a humane cruelty. The only beings dumb enough to throw mountains are now trusted enough to hold keys. Atlas gets the special sentence, bearing the sky. It's not spite, it's symmetry. He embodied endurance for the wrong cause. Now he does it for the world. The Mys finally gets to write. Oaths by the Styx are codified. Break one and the penalty is not embarrassment, but operational downtime. Gods lose voice, seat, or agency for fixed terms. Sanctuary rules harden, altars are neutral ground, and even Zeus must respect that, or everything he built turns into a prettier version of Kronos' appetite. Division of spoils is postponed because Zeus knows the most volatile moment in any revolution is distribution. First you secure, then you allocate. Hestia stokes the fires for a victory that looks less like feasting and more like recovery. Demeter drafts the calendar that will keep people fed while soldiers become farmers again. If you're waiting for laurels and speeches, you missed the point. The victory is architectural. Othyres is no longer a capital. Olympus is not merely taller, it's organized. The sky stops being a pressure and becomes a jurisdiction. The sea stops being a mood and becomes a ministry. The underworld stops being a rumor and becomes a ledger with walls. Power has been forced to put a nameplate on its door. The war rewrote the sky in 3 lines that matter. 1. Strength without constraint is a weather report. not a government. Two allies are better than subjects. Freed talent beats chained insurance. Three evil you can't erase must be engineered into boundaries. When the dust falls, and it does, because even myth respects gravity, Zeus stands not as a man with a better weapon, but as a king with a better memory. He remembers the cave, the emetic, the freed cyclopes, the grin of a hundred-handed brother given permission to exist. He remembers Typhon under Etna, victory's scar as a permanent siren. He remembers that Kronos didn't lose because he was weak. He lost because he refused to share the future with anyone but his own appetite. The battlefield quiets into contours that farmers will call hills. Rivers return to their beds like soldiers to barracks. The sun keeps its route. The moon continues her accountant's rounds. People, those complicated experiments of clay and breath, will inherit a sky that now has rules. Next comes the settlement. How to divide the cosmos without replanting the seeds of paranoia. Dice will roll, lots will be drawn, offices will be sworn on Styx water that tastes like metal and inevitability. But before division comes declaration. Zeus does not crown himself alone. He binds himself to procedure. That's the hidden victory of the Titanomachy, thunder that agrees to be a law, not a tantrum. Winning a war earns you a flag. Keeping a world earns you scars. The instant Olympus stops fighting titans, the cosmos reminds everyone that victory is not the same thing as equilibrium. Some threats are not rival rulers with readable motives. They are shapes of refusal, the remainder when order subtracts chaos and discovers chaos has decimals. Typhon is the headline example, not a titan, not a dragon you can bargain with, a catastrophe with anatomy. The poets try to count him and fail 100 snake coils, wings that unwrite weather, a voice that copies everything from lion roar to human scream. He is not evil in the personal sense. He is the possibility that the map tears. If the Titanomachy was politics, Typhon is geology with an agenda. The first encounter is a humiliation, because that's how real tests happen. Zeus meets Typhon with the confidence of a king who just organized the sky and gets his tendons cut, literally in some tellings, carried off to a cave like a trophy. The message is simple and loud. Sovereignty that cannot survive surprise is theatre. Hermes and Aegipan, or Pan stage, the retrieval in the oldest style, quiet competence, where heroics would be noisy suicide. The sinews are stolen back, relaced. The king remembers how to stand. That detail matters. Olympus will be defined as much by rescue operations as by declarations. Round 2 is not bravado. It's choreography. Athena supplies angles. Apollo times the volleys. The Cyclopes adjust the thunderbolt from spectacle to instrument. Typhon is driven west, pinned under Etna, lava as the price tag attached to a managed monster. Greece tells its children, when the mountain rumbles, you are hearing your security plan doing push-ups. Victory here is not annihilation. It's containment, a theme that will repeat until philosophy arrives and pretends the world can be clean. Containment invites imitation. Giants rise not the Titans' cousins as administrators, but earth-born retaliations. Gaia, angry at Tartarus full of her Titan sons, births the Gigantes from the blood of the sky, or from grievance itself. Either way, they are muscle with a mother's motive. They don't try to govern. They try to disprove the idea that governance can be stable. The Gigantomachy is a different kind of fight from the Titan War. Titans were infrastructure. You defeated them by reorganizing functions. Giants are uprisings. You defeat them by understanding rules. Key rule, the prophecy that no giant can be killed by a god alone. That line is not a cheap twist. It is a charter article. Olympus claims to rule the cosmos in partnership with mortals. Now the cosmos demands evidence. Enter Heracles, mortal born, Zeus sired, a walking verification protocol. The gods can break, bind, stun. Heracles must finish. Alcyoneus drops and rises again because his strength refills on home ground. Athena doesn't complain. She changes the ground, dragging the giant off his recharge zone. So Heracles' arrow can mean conclusion. Porphyrion lunges at Hera. Zeus's bolt staggers. Heracles' shaft teaches him that desire without discipline is terminal. Ephialtes, Eurytus, Pallas, names fall like boulders tipped from ledges, each requiring a duet, divine suppression, human decisiveness. What's the lesson? Olympus cannot be a sealed club. If the order of the world is to survive, it must be porous to human action. That's the price of sovereignty. You share it or you lose it. Greek religion builds that power sharing into ritual, sacrifice as contract, prayer as petition, withstanding, oath as bilateral bond. The Gigantomachy dramatizes that theology with spears. The battles themselves look like murals. Athena planting Pallas, Poseidon ripping Nisseros from Kos to flatten polyboats and leaving an island as a receipt. Artemis cutting precision where Ares delivers volume. But beneath the art is policy. Each giant falls to a combination that encodes a civic rule. No domain enforces alone. Sea needs land, strength needs aim, courage needs law. Even Dionysus shows up, a latecomer with early truths, proving that ecstasy is not the enemy of order when it tramples hubris off the field. When the dust of that second sky war settles, borders exist that did not before, not just lines on maps, categories with teeth. The gods make it plain there is a difference between wild and hostile, between sacred and off-limits, between guest and invader. Sanctuary becomes more than polite architecture. It becomes a pressure valve. If monsters represent pressure, sanctuary is where pressure is ritualized into safety. You don't eliminate eruption, you schedule it. Festivals let frenzy wear a mask and go home on time. But the world keeps inventing edge cases. And Greek myth refuses to lie about the administration. Python coils at Delphi, a serpent of damp earth and ancient claim. Apollo does not broker a compromise. He kills it, then does the thing that marks the difference between tyranny and tenure. He submits to purification. Even the god of measure must be measured. The Pythia's tripod stands over a grave and a promise. The dead thing that used to own this ground and the live oracle that will keep it useful. Sovereignty isn't entitlement. It's licensed with renewal requirements. Elsewhere, Echidna and her mate Typhon or his residue start a family because chaos likes to franchise. Out spill the Sphinx, the Nemean lion, Cerberus, Hydra, Chimera, future obstacles standing in line to audition for the labors will handle you. Heracles is not a random brawler. He is a municipal service, pest control scaled up to mythic pests. Each labor is a lesson in how civilization deals with the ungovernable, strangle, cauterize, outwit, divert, clean faster than filth reproduces, bring a friend, get paid in reputation if not coin. Political subtext: the gods outsource monster management to a mortal program, and then institutionalize the results as stories people tell to learn how to behave under pressure. Not every threat is fangs. Some are grammar errors that got large. Scylla and Charybdis shape seamanship into a discipline. Hog law too tightly and you get eaten, ignore it and you drown. Harpies teach due process, stealing food from Phineus until a corrective alliance restores a sane rationing of justice. The Gorgons enforce gaze rules, look directly at terror and you freeze, learn to use a mirror tools, mediation and you move again. Greek myth hardwires cognitive behavioral therapy into its monster design. With every confrontation, Olympus writes more policy into the world. Oaths by Styx now include penalties that bite, voice lost, seats forfeited, a god's calendar blacked out for 9 years. Hospitality, Xenia, hardens into a moral highway patrol. Hosts must protect, guests must behave. Break it and the erraniers don't negotiate, they prosecute. The Furies don't care about your excuses. They are the part of the system that keeps injury from becoming tradition. Do the gods slip? Constantly. That's part of the system too. Penalties exist precisely because the rulers are not perfect. When Ares indulges bloodlust without civic justification, he gets shamed or jailed by clever mortals. When Poseidon floods to teach a town manners, there must be a reason or an amends. When Zeus strays, romantically strategically, the fallout generates heroes who must clear the resulting debris. Divine error becomes human opportunity, which is both inspiring and bleak. The price of sovereignty is accountability. The cost of divinity is that your mistakes breed quests. By the end of this monster period, Olympus is less shiny and far more believable. The world has learned the emergency numbers and what happens when you dial them. Volcano noises. That's Typhon contained. Sudden madness in a crowd. Dionysus without a permit. Call for wands and choruses. A crime unpunished. Expect night visitors with whips and a legal brief. A town choking on its own cleverness. Apollo will send a puzzle or a plague. Either way you will learn to calibrate. What the Greeks refuse to do is flatten their cosmos into a fairy tale of permanent peace. The price of sovereignty is ongoing maintenance. Zeus doesn't get to retire into cloud furniture, he sits at the switchboard. Athena isn't a statue, she's urban planning in motion. Demeter isn't a corn goddess smiling from labels, she is every famine averted by a granary built in time. Hera isn't just marriage as ceremony, she is alliance as reality check. Hermes is the friction that makes trade possible and theft inefficient. Hestia is the flame you don't notice until it goes out. Then you invent religion to get it back. And humans, they're no longer spectators. The Titanomachy made sure of that. Mortals own a share of the security contract, and myth keeps issuing work orders per city, per family, per stubborn heart. You don't defeat chaos once, you audit it annually and pay the invoice in ritual law and practical heroism. From here, the narrative narrows to a scale where the stakes feel personal, the invention of us, Prometheus with his thought before, and Epimetheus with his thought after. Fire smuggled in a fennel stalk, a jar that is really a policy package with side effects. The species learns that gifts come with conditions and that hope is either the last cruelty or the first tool, depending on how you hold it. Civilization doesn't start with a sunrise, it starts with somebody saying, "This isn't good enough," and then stealing the tool that proves it. In Greek myth, that somebody is Prometheus, edge dweller, prototype engineer, patron saint of the inconvenient conscience. He stands where cosmos thins into possibility, looks at the smooth-running utilities of the gods, and commits the crime every real inventor commits. He decides that capacity should be shared. First, he picks a species to bet on. Human here isn't a bloodline, it's a potential profile, soft, slow, overexposed to weather, with wrists that learn and an attention span that, on a good day, can outstare fear. Prometheus likes that combination. He takes clay, the same muck that remembers rain, and molds a body that can stand upright long enough to choose. Athena breathes, life isn't a switch, it's a loan. The result is not impressive by Titan standards. No fur, no claws, no built-in thunderbolt. But the brain is a candle waiting for flame. Then comes Mycenae, the bargaining table, where optics and outcomes part company. Sacrifice must be formalized. What portion goes to gods? What portion sustains mortals? Prometheus orchestrates a demonstration in 2 piles. Pile 1, gleaming bones wrapped in bright fat, smell and shine. The theatre of offering. Pile 2. The nourishing meat concealed under a plain skin, nutrition without spectacle. Zeus chooses the glitter, like every ruler who thinks audiences eat appearance. The precedent is set. Humans will keep the edible, the gods will receive smoke and ceremony. It's not theft. It's a mirror held up to power's appetite. But Zeus recognizes the insult inside the lesson. Contract acknowledged. Grudge opened. Zeus retaliates with subtraction. He pulls fire, not lightning in the abstract. The practical flame that makes dead animal into meal and night into workshop. Without fire, humans have bodies that remember standing but futures that collapse at dusk. The species huddles, cold and plausible. Prometheus watches hunger right itself behind human eyes and refuses to accept a world that abandons its apprentices. He steals it back. Do not underplay the logistics. Lightning is not a campfire, it's tantrum. To domesticate it, you need method. Prometheus chooses a fennel stalk, hollow, fibrous, reluctant to advertise. He smuggles an ember through the surveillance of heaven, like a dissident moving a printing press. He delivers it not to kings. There aren't any yet, or priests. Those will arrive with granaries, but to hands. Fire spreads the way secrets do, one household at a time, until a village lights the same dusk with 20 identical decisions. Humanity changes fast. This is the point. Fire is not just heat, it's time manipulation. With flame, evening becomes a second day. With cookery, calories multiply as if a cheat code has been entered. With light, fear loses its monopoly on the dark. With metallurgy, eventually stone's patience gets competition. And with the hearth comes something gods rarely have to practice: collaboration around a common heat source. A circle of faces learns to take turns speaking. That's politics embryo. Zeus answers again, because that is what kings do when they sense a principle escaping. The punishment is elegant in its cruelty. He will not erase the gift. He will attach a cost that reproduces forever. Enter Pandora, not a bimbo with a prop jar, but policy in a dress, the first woman shaped as a composite of divine competencies and failings, then sent to mortals carrying a sealed container of extras. The gods build her the way a committee builds a bill. Each member tucks in a favorite clause. Athena lends craft and curiosity. Aphrodite, allure. Hermes, smooth talk and a side channel of mischief. Hephaestus gives workmanship impeccable enough to humiliate any club of men who thought they were special for knowing knots. Hera contributes a backbone of expectations. Demeter the timing of seasons, encoded as pulse and hunger. Zeus wraps it with the smile of a ruler who loves proofs. Epimetheus receives her. Remember, he is afterthought, the gentler brother whose caution always arrives an afternoon late. Prometheus had told him, with the intensity of someone who has already paid for foresight with solitude, do not accept gifts from the arch-strategist. Epimetheus hears, nods, forgets. He opens his door, his house, and eventually the container, because curiosity isn't sin in Greek myth, it's physics. When seals meet hands, seals break. outrush the additives that make the human condition more than hunger plus weather. Not demons with names and swords, latencies that embed themselves in calendars and bodies, fatigue that won't negotiate, illness that regards fairness as an anecdote, jealousy that calculates faster than love, slander that travels farther than truth, accident that ignores your age, old age that patronizes you into surrender, pain, debt, vanity, forgetfulness, every patch applied to human freedom that triggers an update you didn't ask for. The house fills with drafts. The world contracts into a place where good must be wrestled out of hours that do not volunteer it. Only one thing stays when Pandora slams the lid: Olympus. Hope. Scholars argue whether it is good or another trap. The myth gives you a choice, because life does. If hope is locked inside the jar, then humans live with a manageable inventory of harms and a reserve of optimism sealed away for emergency, comforting. If hope remains in the world because it was too slow to fly, then humans now share their bed with a trickster that can keep you alive long enough to make it worse, or inspire you long enough to make it better, dangerous. Either way, the ruling is the same. After Pandora, meaning is work. Zeus isn't finished. Prometheus needs disciplining because gifts without permission become precedents. The binding is theatre and theory in one act. They chain him to a pillar of rock at the edge of the world. Scythia if you want the map, margin if you want the lesson, no court, no jury. This is executive clarity. An eagle arrives on schedule daylight because shame should be visible and eats Prometheus's liver. Night returns the organ. The next day repeats. The body becomes a workplace for punishment that calls itself maintenance. This is the king saying, steal fire, and I will turn your foresight into a calendar you can't change. Prometheus does not apologize. He knows two dangerous things. First, he knows a prophecy about Zeus, about a child who will someday be born stronger than the father who sires it. Second, he knows name-specific, leverage-grade names attached to how and where that danger might occur. Zeus wants those names. Prometheus refuses. His silence is not obstinacy, it's species protection. The man who brought you flame also brings you the doctrine that some information in some hands is safer as a rumor than as a file. Here is where Heracles walks into the myth like a procedural reform. Later in the story, after labors, after the kind of grief that teaches muscle to think, he passes the cliff, sees the eagle, draws the bow, and ends the loop with an arrow that knows exactly what it owes to fire. He frees Prometheus because the cosmos needs both law and gratitude to remain livable. This is not a jailbreak, it's a correction to sentencing. Prometheus pays a reduced penalty. He must wear a ring of his fetter with a pebble of his rock set in it. Accessory is jurisprudence because even mercy in Greek myth keeps receipts. Meanwhile, humans are busy inventing themselves. The hearth is now a school. Bread is a technology disguised as tenderness. With fire we unlearn the helplessness of flesh. With Pandora we learn that every unboxing has a recurring fee. Sickness teaches surgery and herb lore. Winter teaches storage and stories with moral payloads. Jealousy invents law. Gossip invents reputation management, and then literature. Forgetfulness invents writing. Vanity invents mirrors and then philosophy to argue about what they mean. You call this culture, the gods call it maintenance from below. Notice how the system stabilizes because of the tension. Zeus does not re-steal fire. He lets the gift stand because at scale, fire makes better subjects, predictable, productive, ritual-friendly. Prometheus remains a friend who bites, the needed critic inside the mythic ecosystem. Pandora does not become a villain. She becomes a matriarch. The line "women are a punishment" is the kind of petty misogyny Greek myth invites. then undercuts by making every functioning city depend on women's labor, intelligence, alliances, and endurance. Hera's portfolio is marriage for a reason. Demeter's is food, because the hearth never asks who made the bread before it gives you the right to eat it. And hope. It develops a schedule. In planting season, it is confidence minus denial. In plague, it is triage minus surrender. In war, it is the arithmetic that says, hold the wall until dawn. In love, it is the bet that two fallible calendars can synchronize without the weather laughing. Hope is not a potion. It's a skill you practice when your back hurts and the room is cold and you light the fire anyway. From the gods' vantage, the Prometheus Pandora package accomplishes a constitutional goal. Mortals become partners who need the gods but can function without micromanagement. People will pray because weather is still a bully, but they will also plan because fire made them see tomorrow as a thing they can aim at. Sacrifices continue, now with thigh bones burned on purpose, because ritual must dramatize hierarchy even when the pantry is full. Oaths by sticks become enforceable because humans have enough stability to feel the pain of breaking them. The city-state emerges as a piece of hardware that runs law on top of myths, that run fear on top of appetites that run fire. What about Epimetheus, the after-thinker who opened the door? He doesn't get applause, but he doesn't get erased either. The Greeks are ruthless in this way. They keep the people who make the mistakes because they know you can't staff a civilization with Prometheuses only. You need those who learn the hard way and then become reliable precisely because they remember breaking the jar. Afterthoughts design better lids. If you're looking for the moral, don't settle for stealing is good or curiosity is bad. The moral is surgical. Any gift that accelerates a species must be tempered by norms that refuse to turn the gift into a weapon against the giver. Prometheus brings acceleration. Zeus installs friction. Pandora embeds contingency. Heracles audits the sentence and removes the part that had stopped being instructive. That's a system, not a sermon. By the end of this chapter, humans possess fire, hunger, medicine, lies, songs, aging, law, weddings, funerals, and the gnawing courage called hope. The gods possess a steadier supply of smoke and praise, plus the comfort of knowing that the creatures down there will keep the lights on and the calendars honest. Prometheus keeps his ethic forethought that won't cave to intimidation. Zeus keeps his sovereignty, thunder guided by policy. Pandora keeps unfolding. Every generation opens a new version of the same container and renegotiates the terms with reality. And now the world is ready for its first hard reboot. Not the elegant surgery of sacrifice, not the executive punishment of a single dissident, but a population-level correction, water as eraser, stones as seed. A flood is coming, not to wipe the brains clean, but to scrub the arrogance off the surface, so the species can remember it is fragile by design. Civilization learns fast. Corruption learns faster. Give humans fire, and they'll bake bread, and also excuses. The more we can do, the more creative we get at pretending consequences are for other people. Greek myth doesn't whine about this. It escalates. Enter Lycaon, king of Arcadia, a hospitality test gone rancid. Zeus is visiting in mortal disguise, because that's how you audit a world without your presence doing the work for you. Lycaon serves him a meal, laced with human flesh to see if the guest is really a god. That's not curiosity. That's contempt for the most sacred rule running, Xenia. The obligation to protect and honor the stranger. Zeus flips the table, and the verdict is immediate. You don't just fail the audit, you trigger a reset. One boat floats with intent, not luck. Deucalion, son of Prometheus, has the one advantage that outlives wealth and good looks, warnings from someone who actually thinks ahead. Prometheus tells him to build a chest, a box boat, a portable conservatory for Deucalion and his wife Pyrrha, daughter of Prometheus and Pandora, which means she is literally the heir of Afterthought and the owner of a jar that changed the species. The pairing is not cute, it's doctrinal. Forethought marries Afterthought, and survival is what they raise together. Reset, in Greek, is water. Flood myths aren't original to Greece, but the Greek version tells you something brutally local. The gods don't hate humanity. They hate humanity when it forgets it's human. Zeus doesn't debate committees or publish a white paper. He opens the sky and instructs Poseidon to break the locks on the sea. Rain hits like an argument with no pauses. Rivers forget their beds. Hills practice becoming islands and then run out of practice. The world becomes a single featureless thing with loud opinions. The flood recedes, not because weather got tired, but because policy decided enough was enough. Zeus is not sulking, he is recalibrating. The surface is mud. The silence is huge. Deucalion and Pyrrha step onto ground that remembers having been drowned, and do the only sane thing after you've witnessed a deletion. They go to a shrine. Thebes keeps the altar there. Thebes, who has always been what ought to be when everyone else is busy being what is. They ask the right question in the right place. Not why us, but what now? They load the chest, not with animals 2 by 2 like a different culture's logistics plan, but with the only cargo Greek myth insists on for a species worth saving: reverence, remorse, and a willingness to ask instructions when the water drops. For 9 days and nights, the box rides a world with no edges until it kisses the shoulder of Parnassus or Etna or Othrys. Pick your region, the lesson stands. What matters is height, a place high enough to breathe, sober enough to think. The oracle arrives without romance. Cover your heads, loosen your garments, and throw behind you the bones of your great mother. There's the Greek signature help that sounds like a riddle, because the cosmos refuses to spoon-feed a species that wants to be adult. Deucalion hears bones and balks. Pyrrha hears great mother and looks at the earth under her feet. Gaia is the mother. Stones are her bones. They pick up what the ground offers and throw it over their shoulders into a future they are not allowed to stare down. Behind them, the stones soften, sprout, shape. Men from Deucalion's throes, women from Pyrrha's. The Greeks aren't shy about the metaphor. People are hard material animated by effort. We are meant to be resilient, not delicate, shaped by struggle, not retail therapy. It's also a policy. Your neighbors are not alien. They are literally made from the same ground you stand on. Treat them accordingly. This new humanity isn't naive. The flood wasn't a scolding, it was a syllabus. People learn fast what the gods have been screaming since Mekone. Ritual is not flattery, it's maintenance. Altars go up where water left edges. Oaths get heavier. Hospitality is reinforced not as manners but as survival logic. Today's stranger can be tomorrow's audit. Villages start to codify miasma. Ritual pollution that spreads when a crime is unacknowledged into public health for the soul. You don't eat with a murderer who hasn't atoned, because guilt is contagious and the rain remembers. From these stone-born come names that become maps. Deucalion and Pyrrha beget Helen, not Helen of Troy, different flame, the eponymous ancestor of the Helens. Helen fathers Doris, Xuthus, and Aeolus, triangulating Greece's major identity clusters into Dorians, Ionians, Achaeans, through Xuthus's sons Ion and Achaeus, and Aeolians. Notice what myth is doing. It turns a theological reboot into a family tree, so cities can narrate themselves as cousins instead of permanent enemies. It doesn't erase rivalry, it domesticates it. Zeus, for his part, changes less than the pious would like and exactly as much as a working universe requires. He keeps the thunderbolt, but he grows more allergic to using it as impulse. The flood is proof that he can wipe the board. Restraint afterward is proof that he'd rather not. Olympus isn't a daycare, it's a constitution under revision. The nymphs gets more hours. Olympus gets a bigger travel budget because negotiation beats cleanup. Demeter's calendar becomes binding. Famine is no longer treated as a divine mood, but as a civic failure to respect cycles. One more thread. Mercy with receipts. After the flood, Zeus doesn't swear, never again. Greek myth isn't interested in impossible promises. What the gods do is build friction into the system so societies correct earlier. Oracles proliferate. Delphi loudest among them to give warning before rain becomes policy. Festivals become safety valves, where frenzy gets a license and a time to go home. Law courts evolve, piloted by Athena in places like Athens, to pull vengeance out of the hands that shake hardest and put it behind procedures that require persuasion. The Furies get chambers and titles, Eumenides, the kindly ones, because even rage at injustice works better when it's on a calendar. Deucalion and Pyrrha don't become kings of everything. They become the kind of founders who are remembered, because their solution scales. Their children and grandchildren scatter not as refugees but as seed. Aeneas learns wind and order, and ends up with dynastic weather. Theseus makes sons where politics need brands. Iron and Achaeus become banners that armies can rally behind without pretending they're not cousins. Perseus supplies the stern timber of a people who will later show up in Spartan armor and argue through action. And the species. We keep the mud on our boots as a memory device. Flood stories become bedtime threats and civic meditation both. They tell the young you are fragile on purpose. The gods could have armored you like lions. They didn't. They made you upright and cold at night, then gave you fire and rules and the right to choose. You can be Ludicone, clever and contemptuous, and find yourself downstream of justice, or you can be Deucalion and Pyrrha, stubborn and reverent, and learn to rebuild without asking for applause. Do not romance the restart. The post-flood world is not Eden with better lighting. It's the same terrain, now carrying the memory of deep water. Fields get planted by hands that know what it's like to wonder if tomorrow will exist. Marriages are made with eyes open. Altars smoke with offerings that confess dependence without begging for tyranny. That is the Greek version of maturity. Accept your limits, exploit your capacities, honor the rules that keep communities from becoming appetites with flags. From this reset point, myth widens into a network of cities that will each try to prove they understood the lesson. Some will, many won't. Heroes will arise not because the gods are bored, but because the system needs constant patching, and over it all, Olympus will hum imperfect, policed by oaths and grudges, staffed by powers who make mistakes, and then, crucially, pay for them. From water to walls, next we climb out of the general story of humans and walk into the particular architecture of Olympus, who holds which keys, which favors, which grudges, and how divine politics becomes the template mortals copy when they try to build anything that lasts. After the flood, after monsters learn their kennels, Olympus stops being a victorious camp and becomes a building with rules, not marble first, protocol first. What survives in Greek myth is not just who throws better lightning, but who understands how to make power behave. Start with the floor plan. Olympus isn't a clubhouse, it's a cabinet. 12 seats, give or take. Membership flexes by city and century. But the architecture of responsibility is stable. Zeus sits center, not because he's nicest, but because he's the switchboard. Storms, verdicts, treaties, and timing run through him. He is Zeus Xenios, protector of guests, Zeus Hawkios, guardian of oaths, Zeus Polios, city order. 3 titles, 1 thesis, hospitality, honesty, and civic sanity are not optional virtues. They are load-bearing beams. Hera to his right is not a caricature of jealousy. She's the institution of legitimacy. Weddings aren't about flowers, they're about recognition. The city acknowledging a union so inheritance, alliance, and custody don't get decided by knives. Hera's wrath, when it flares, is the penalty function of a system that keeps getting bypassed. You cut her out the fabric phrase. Poseidon runs water like an executive who knows that every crisis eventually becomes a plumbing problem. Seas, quakes, horses, one portfolio, momentum. He doesn't rule by subtlety. He rules by reminding cities that harbors, trade winds, and stable ground are favors you keep by behaving. Offend Poseidon, and your peer learns to jump. Hades holds what everyone pretends they don't care about: final ownership. The underworld is not a cave of sad. It's the property registry of existence. Souls go down because the ledger demands closure. He is neither evil nor friendly. He is inevitability with a boundary. Break burial customs, and you are not offending a mood. You are vandalizing the filing system of meaning. Hestia is the quiet center. Hearthfire is not decor, it is continuity. Her flame in each home mirrors her flame in each city's praetenuan public hearth. As long as it burns, the polis is alive. She rarely leaves her seat because stability doesn't travel. It anchors. In some tellings she yields a chair to Dionysus, not as demotion but as graceful arithmetic. Make room for renewal. I will keep the middle. Demeter owns time you can eat. Grain cycles are calendars turned into bread. Ignore her and your city learns famine's grammar. Honor her, especially in places like Eleusis, and you get a treaty. The dead are feared less, and the living stop hoarding like raccoons. Her daughter Persephone splits the year, and with it your psychology, grief and growth as seasons, not permanent verdicts. Athena is a city wearing armor. She's the patron saint of applied intelligence, weaving, shipbuilding, siegecraft, law courts, urban planning. She wins not by rage, but by design. Her presence means a polis. Learn to count the shadow lengths before building the wall, and to argue evidence before picking up stones. Her disputes with Poseidon over patronage. Athens chooses olive over salt water, a policy debates, steady prosperity versus volatile power. Apollo is clarity with a bow. Light, measure, music, prophecy, one ethos calibration. He kills Python, then submits to purification, because even the god of order acknowledges that order must obey its own rules. Delphi is his call center, staffed by a woman breathing earth and speaking in cadence. Kings and beggars get the same kind of answer direction, not micromanagement. Artemis keeps the edges honest. Threshold law, she is liminal space. The hunt, childbirth, growth spurts, remote groves that don't want your city noise. Offend her and a wind won't blow. A ship won't launch. A birth will stall. Respect her and the wild cooperates just enough for civilization to continue without turning into a strip mine. Hermes is the friction that makes exchange work. Messenger, patron of merchants and thieves, inventor of the deal, he is not hypocrisy. He is the acknowledgement that flows have costs. Borders need smugglers to keep tyrannies brittle. Markets need rules written by someone who understands loopholes. He moves information faster than scandal and can talk a snake into a savings plan. Without Hermes, treaties die in the mail. Hephaestus is dignity for hands. Forge, craft, hinge, prosthetic, problem-solving in metal and fire. Thrown from heaven, limps back with tools that make gods dependent on the guy they mocked. His shop runs on the rule that reality rewards adequate engineering over pedigrees. He makes nets that catch adulterers and chains that hold titans because physics doesn't care who your father is. Hers is the part of war that reads poetry about itself. Necessary, sometimes. Trusted, rarely. He embodies unmanaged violence, spectacle, charge, collapse. He's there to remind cities that courage without coordination is a mass grave. When he wins, it's because someone smarter harnessed him. When he loses, the survivors build statutes. Aphrodite is not love goddess in the greeting card sense. She's social gravity, alliance, allure, fertility, prestige, the glue that makes crowds tolerate each other long enough to found a harbour. Who she favours prospers, who she insults, writes plays. Her entanglement with Ares is a policy paper. Desire and violence are neighbours, mismanage one and the other walks in. Dionysus is licensed ecstasy. Wine, theatre, masks, mania with a calendar, he is controlled burn. Cities that ban him rot. Cities that drown in him burn. Get the balance right, and you get creativity, catharsis, and a populace that returns to work after screaming safely in the orchestra seats. Now fit the peripherals, Themis divine right order, and decur justice's outcome. Nemesis rebalancer, debt collector of hubris, Hawkos the oath personified, who strangles oath breakers invisibly. Moirae Clotho Lachesis Atropo, fate as allocation spun, measured, cut. Even Zeus respects them, because sovereignty that tries to outrun limit becomes Chronos with better PR. Iris the rainbow ferries messages when Hermes is busy. Hecate keeps crossroads and witchlight. Tyche rolls dice in city plazas to remind mayors that probability asks for a seat at every budget meeting. This pantheon doesn't rule by force alone. It roots responsibility. Here sets how the network operates. One oaths are infrastructure. Swear by the sticks and you put your uptime at risk. Break it, and the penalty isn't a lightning slap, it's operational downtime. A god can lose voice, seat, or agency for set years. That's constitutional law for immortals. For mortals, perjury sickens the city, crops fail, juries fall apart, merchants default. Hawkos doesn't sleep. He audits. Hospitality is border security. Xenia is Zeus's personal vanity project, because it is the cheapest and safest way to move intelligence across a fragmented landscape. Treat strangers well, and you get trade routes, marriages, news, and gods in disguise, leaving blessings instead of craters. Violate Xenia, and you don't just anger heaven, you set your polis up for information starvation. 3. Sanctuary is pressure management. Altars and temples are not magic force fields, they are agreements. A suppliant at an altar becomes the city's problem, not a family's revenge loop. That's how you turn blood feuds into court calendars. Even Zeus respects the rope around a god's statue. If he doesn't, the entire premise of order collapses back into Chronos' appetite. 4. Miasma is public hygiene. Unatoned blood guilt spreads like mold through rooms, through families, through seasons. Purifications aren't superstition. They are system resets, so the community can touch each other again without catching yesterday's crime on their hands. Apollo's plagues are not tantrums, they are compliance checks. 5 oracles are the info layer. Delphi is not fortune-telling, it's decision support. Ambiguity served straight so leaders must think. Dodona whispers through oak leaves. Ammon advises under desert stars. Local cults provide hyperlocal intel. You don't ask, will I win? You ask, what am I not seeing? Good rulers hear, translate, and then execute. Bad rulers cherry-pick lines to launder bad choices. 6 temples are banks, that treasury at Delphi. Deposits, loans, political leverage. Sacred spaces hold trust, because they're harder to rob without cosmic consequences. That trust finances fleets. Religion is logistics wearing perfume. 7 festivals are firmware updates. Panathenea, Dionysia, the Thesmophoria. Public rituals that reinforce identity, redistribute food, and vent pressure. The city eats together, laughs together, cries on schedule, and renews the social contract without needing a police raid. This is the divine operating system. Mortals copy shamelessly. A polis with a council, courts, market inspectors, harbour masters, festival calendars, and a citizen's oath is basically Athens wearing a laurel you can't see. Athena directs law. Apollo times harvest and song. Hermes clears the ports. Demeter gets the silos full. Hestia keeps the lights steady. Zeus signs the warrants. Hera certifies marriages that tie houses into districts. Eris is kept upstairs in a chest unless absolutely necessary. Dionysus gets the public theatre permit. Hephaestus repairs the gate hinge. Aphrodite ensures there are enough babies and alliances to justify next year's budget. Poseidon is appeased before ships leave. Hades keeps wills enforceable. When it works, you call it order. When it fails, you call a hero. And when order does fail, because someone ignored Xenia, or swore falsely, or let miasma fester, the enforcement stack activates. Furies Erinyes smell blood logic, and show up with a legal pad and whips. Nemesis rebalances a boastful ledger with interest. 8 Ruin walks fools to a cliff while saying, great plan. Apology and purification are real, structured, often humiliating, and absolutely required. Greek myth is allergic to costless forgiveness. Even gods pay fines. Do the gods backstab? Yes. Welcome to politics. But betrayal triggers counterweights. Zeus can't simply vaporize rivals without destabilizing the oath economy. Hera's spite must thread needles because cities need weddings more than vendettas. Poseidon's quakes are edited by Athena's building codes. Apollo's strictness is tempered by Artemis's feral mercy. Dionysus's intoxication is bracketed by Hestia's restraint. The point isn't that they're saints, it's that their frictions keep the machine from cooking itself. 2 addenda that matter if you want to understand Greek stories at hero scale. Suppliance and oaths create plot. Break either, and you don't just become a villain, you light a beacon that drags half the pantheon into your business. Think of every tragedy as a compliance case that spiraled. Honor, timor, and glory, Cleos are currencies, not decorations. Gods distribute timai, honor's roles. Mortals chase Cleo's reputation that outlives bone. The system is calibrated, so chasing Cleos without respecting timor triggers nemesis. Heroes who learn to convert their glory into public good become founders. Those who hoard it become tragedies with good wardrobes. By the time this chapter ends, you should feel what the Greeks felt: the world is survivable, because it is structured, and structure is survivable, because it is argued, sung, inspected, and refreshed. Zeus is not a despot, he is chair of a committee that can still throw a thunderbolt when the minutes are done. Olympus works because it understands a brutal adult fact. Freedom without forms rots, forms without freedom crack. So when mortals petition the gods to fix messes, the answer is often a person, not a lightning strike. That's the next layer. The hero engine, individuals deployed like tools to do the slow, dirty work of civilization. They kill dragons. Yes, mostly they solve municipal problems wearing lion skins. When Olympus wants a problem solved without rewriting the sky, it doesn't call a committee. It commissions a person. Heroes are not mascots. They're tools that can cross boundaries. Gods must respect. They move where thunderbolts would cause constitutional damage. The Greeks, famously unsentimental, built their hero stories like manuals. Here's the mess, here's the kit, here's the cost. No hero is clearer than Perseus for surgical precision and Heracles for industrial scale maintenance. Perseus is the precision strike with limited collateral. His story begins the way effective policies often do, with a bad promise and a better workaround. King Acrisius hears a prophecy that his grandson will end him. The standard tyrant reflex is to cage the reproductive future, so he locks daughter Danae in a bronze room to make sure nobody writes destiny across his bloodline. Zeus, who has learned from caves and emetics, doesn't blow the door off its hinges. He arrives as golden rain, a metaphor so indecent and ingenious that poets never stop smirking. The point isn't scandal, it's policy. If you block the straightforward path, fate will atomize and go through the keyhole. Perseus grows up offshore, literally cast into the sea in a chest with his mother, and fetched by a fisherman, Dictys. Good men with nets are forever rescuing plans from tyrants with locks. The island's petty ruler, Polydectes, wants Danae and wants Perseus gone. He announces a gift drive for a fake wedding and demands a horse from each man. Perseus, broke and proud, volunteers a better present, the head of Medusa. That's what youthful bravado is for in Greek myth. Signing contracts your future intelligence must figure out how to fulfill. The gods kit him out because targeted violence has rules. Athena provides the reflective shield, a technology of mediation that says, don't look straight at catastrophes that weaponize your attention. Hermes lends the sickle sword, the harp, and later a pair of winged sandals for mobility. Hades loans the helm of invisibility, presence without exposure. The Hesperides offer a kibisis, a sack tough enough to hold a problem without letting it leak. The inventory reads like a startup seed round, modest gear with outrageous leverage because the plan is designed, not brute forced. Medusa is not a monster of the week, she's an epistemic hazard. Look, and you harden, mind, voice, motion converted to stone. Gorgons rattle, snake hair hisses. A lair of former men becomes sculpture garden. Perseus rehearses humility by practicing with the mirror of Athena's shield. He enters backward, eyes down, blade forward. It's not macho, it's protocol. He uses tools to preserve cognitive hygiene in a place built to punish raw nerve. The kill, when it happens, is cleaner than art usually permits. He takes the angle, avoids direct gaze, and cuts. From the neck, Pegasus and Chrysaor burst creativity and wealth riding out of decapitated fear. When you handle terror correctly, it vents capacity. Perseus sacks the head, containment is half the victory, and moves. He does not linger in rooms that exist to flatter his courage. On the return, he handles mission creep with elegant, opportunistic ethics. King Atlas refuses hospitality, so Perseus doesn't haggle. He shows Medusa's face, and the man becomes a mountain carrying sky, hostility repurposed into infrastructure. At Seriphos, Polydectes tries to force Danae. Perseus lifts the bag, flash freezes a roomful of leering men, and hands the island back to Dictys. justice as municipal reset. The Medusa head becomes an institutional tool, fixed on Athena's aegis, weaponized ore in service of order. And yes, there is Andromeda. Perseus sees a woman chained to a rock because her mother couldn't keep hyperbole out of her mouth. The sea monster is coming. He makes the math fast. If he kills the beast, he saves a human and bankrupts a bad tradition, sacrificing daughters to fix public relations with gods. He cuts the chains, kills the threat, marries the rescued. It's a marriage myth, but also a policy correction disguised as romance. Cities that make girls pay for elite vanity will be pried open by men who travel with mirrors and bags. Perseus ends the prophecy circle with a sad Greek flourish. He avoids his grandfather Acrisius to dodge destiny, and still kills him by accident with a discus at games. The moral isn't the wine that you can't escape fate. It's the clarity that parameters matter. You can remove tyrants and still fling unintended consequences across an afternoon, because velocity plus pride equals accident. Even precision missions. Draft obituaries for bystanders. Perseus leaves Greece with portable lessons expressed in action rather than lists. Use mediation to face what direct vision would break. Contain the thing you kill because it will be useful later. Turn enemies into architecture when possible. And finish the promise with receipts by returning the island to the fisherman who saved you. If Perseus is the scalpel, Heracles is the public works department with shoulders. Heracles is civilization at scale. He is born as a corrective, the system's self-repair algorithm dressed in muscle. Zeus wants a son who will turn bad maps into roads. Hera wants respect for marriage contracts that Zeus treats like weather. Their feud isn't gossip. It's structural conflict, sovereignty versus legitimacy. The boy catches divine hostility early, wrestles snakes in his crib, and grows up with the physics of frustration in his arms. He marries Megara, fathers children, and then, under Hera's engineered madness, murders the very future he was building. Greek myth refuses to sanitize its maintenance crews. When sanity returns, he does not posture. He petitions. Delphi prescribes atonement through labor, and King Eurystheus becomes the bureaucrat who will hold the checklist. This is crucial. The greatest strongman in myth submits to paperwork. Civilization is muscles on a leash. The 12 labors are not party tricks. They are a municipal agenda disguised as legend. He strangles the Nemean lion, whose hide cannot be pierced and wears the skin, turning trauma into uniform and proving that some systems cannot be hacked, only outlasted. He meets the Linnaean hydra that multiplies when cut and learns to cauterize with Iola's help. Innovation and teamwork beat exponential problems. He dips his arrows in venom, banking residual capacity for future conflicts, and discovers that bureaucracy will try to erase collaboration by disqualifying the win. He chases the sacred Ceryneian hind for a year, apologizes to Artemis, and returns the creature unharmed, practicing restraint and respect for sacred jurisdictions within secular projects. He hauls the Erymanthian boar out of winter traps, while a side quest with drunken centaurs teaches the boring wisdom to avoid policy while intoxicated. He cleans the Augean stables not with brooms but by rewriting riverbeds, proving infrastructure beats labor. The king tries to disqualify him for taking payment, but the work stands and cities learn hydraulic thinking. He confronts the Stymphalian birds, whose razor feathers and toxic droppings poison the landscape. Athena's rattles flush them, arrows finish them, and a clean signal to action to strike sequence becomes ecological policy. He subdues the Cretan bull without turning Crete into collateral, capturing rather than crater-making. He ends the Mars of Diomedes by feeding Diomedes to his own program, showing that bad leadership is the root cause of many monsters. He seeks the belt of Hippolyta, where rumor and Hera's disguise derail diplomacy and remind everyone that public relations can ruin good intentions. He drives the cattle of Geryon across the world's edge and plants pillars at the strait, so logistics becomes landscape and infrastructure doubles as mythology. He bargains with Atlas for the apples of the Hesperides, holds the sky, and then outsmarts the strongman to return the world to its proper architecture. Strength married to cunning, so heroes don't become the monsters they replace. Finally, he brings up Cerberus without killing him, demonstrating competence at limits and respect for boundary guardians, so the cosmos is safer than any victory parade. What is this if not public administration with monsters? Where Perseus cut and bagged, Heracles diverts rivers and revises supply chains. Where Perseus used reflection, Heracles uses iteration. Where Perseus makes a few enemies into landscape, Heracles makes entire catastrophes into procedure. And the man pays. The Hydra venom on those arrows will later kill him by degrees in the Nessus and Deucalion catastrophe. Externalized costs come back. He graduates from life by building his own pyre, burning mortal residue, and becoming a god apotheosis as severance package. Olympus keeps him because Olympus needs a department head who knows how filthy the stables get. The hero economy runs like a circuit breaker in a system wired for crisis. Inputs are divine grudges, local stupidity, monsters that test category boundaries, and oracles with ambiguous instructions. Outputs are ports that function, roads free of brigands, rivers in their beds, festivals that vent safely, and temples whose treasuries are still there next week. The audits are merciless. Heroes who hoard their Clios implode, ask Ajax later. Heroes who convert glory into public good become founders. Shrines rise not because heroes were cute, but because maintenance deserves memory. In this economy, glory, Clios, is currency rather than seasoning. It pays forward in narrative training, runs for the next crisis. Honor Tema is allocation, gods assign domains and cities assign privileges. A hero who disrespects a god's Tema by boasting that he did it alone receives a nemesis invoice with interest. A hero who respects Tema and spends Clios on infrastructure gains statues and, more importantly, inheritance, the kind of city that keeps working. The gear always matters. Perseus's mirror shield is any tool that protects cognition in the presence of panic. The modern equivalent is a cockpit checklist or a surgical monitor. Heracles' river diversion is any solution that changes system architecture instead of blaming workers. The Cubisis is containment protocol. The Hydra cautery is a root cause fix. The Aegis is institutional memory. Hades' helm is discretion when spectacle would wreck outcomes. As policy models, heroes come in two broad modes that cities must master. The targeted intervention model. Perseus identifies a singular hazard, approaches indirectly, neutralizes with minimal blast radius, and repurposes the artifact as a deterrent. The systemic remediation model. Heracles maps the whole failure mode, accepts that tasks will be dirty and unglamorous, biases toward infrastructure, enforces with credible force, and documents the fix with pillars, altars, or rituals, so future leaders don't have to rediscover the technique under duress. Together they teach the Greek city what competence feels like: brave but not stupid, clever but not cute, strong but harnessed to an outcome other than ego. They leave a template for the rest: Theseus, Jason, Bellerophon, leaders who will test, stretch, or betray the model, and teach through their successes and collapses. Power isn't done testing itself. After Perseus's clean cuts and Heracles' heavy lifts, Greece tries to scale heroism into leadership. That's harder. Now you're herding humans with opinions, not beasts with appetites. The next case studies show where the tool bends and where it breaks. An Athenian civic myth that mostly works in Theseus, and an expeditionary startup that eats itself in Jason. The hero phase proved one thing. A single body can fix a single mess. But cities aren't single messes. They're swarms competing needs, noisy neighbors, memories that vote. So Greece pushes the experiment. Can you take hero traits and scale them into governance? Two case studies answer with opposite voltages. Theseus shows how competence becomes a city. Jason shows how charisma becomes a cautionary tale. Athens needed more than muscle. It needed a narrative that welded scattered villages into one polis. Enter Theseus, son of Aegis or Poseidon, depending on which grants more leverage at the moment. He starts with a Persean choice. Take the easy sea road or the bandit-choked land. He chooses land because good rulers clean the route everyone else avoids. The journey to Athens is a municipal audit disguised as a gauntlet. Periphetes the club-bearer smashes travelers for sport. Theseus kills him and keeps the club not as trophy, as policy. The city now monopolizes force. Sinis the pine-bender tears people apart with trees. Theseus pays him back with his own method. Lex talionis weaponized against arbitrary cruelty. Cerceron kicks guests off a cliff to be eaten by a man-eating turtle. Theseus reverses the kick. Translation: hospitality violations earn terminal consequences. Cerceon, a wrestler who murders defeated opponents, gets thrown and killed. Sport gets rules. Losers get to live. Procrustes, the bedfitter who stretches or shears bodies to fit a single standard, gets tailored by his own tools. Athens will not be a one-size-fits-all machine. These are not random monsters. They're anti-civic behaviors. Theseus's road clearing is public policy. Safe corridors for trade, predictable outcomes for citizens. A monopoly on violence with oversight. In Athens, he solves a domestic trap. Aegeus, coached by Medea, nearly poisons him. Palace politics, universal and boring. Theseus survives because competence outlives gossip. Then the Minotaur bill arrives. Crete demands 7 youths and 7 maidens, tribute for a past Athenian sin. Athens pays because tyrants with fleets make payment feel like prudence. Theseus calls it what it is: civic humiliation. He volunteers as tribute, not for drama, for reset. Crete is a maze with a monster. Infrastructure built to enshrine fear. Minos' palace is bureaucracy made marble. Daedalus's labyrinth is complexity, weaponized. Ariadne hands Theseus a low-tech miracle, string. It's not romance first, it's version control. A path out is as important as glory in. Theseus does 3 right things. 1. He listens. Heroes who ignore good advice become statues in someone else's garden. 2. He fights inside constraints. You can't burn a maze without burning the city. He kills quietly. 3. He exits cleanly. Thread rewound. People retrieved. Ship launched. No victory that strands survivors counts. The Minotaur dies. Brute appetite retired from public office. But Theseus flinches on the ethics of gratitude. Ariadne wakes on Naxos, abandoned. Choose your version: divine intervention. Dionysus wants her. Political calculation: a foreign princess is a liability. Or Theseus' character showing seams. Greek myth doesn't tidy this. Athens gets its founder. A woman pays the price of his strategic clarity or cowardice. Either way, leaders' private choices plant public ghosts. On return, Theseus forgets to swap the black sails for white. The prearranged signal to his father, that he's alive. Aegeus sees black, steps off a cliff. The Aegean is named for that misread. Fate, no ops error. Athens learns the boring, lethal truth. Checklists save kings. Theseus rules, and here's where he tower differentiates from the solo hero template. He enacts the Cenoicism, political unification of Attica's villages under Athens. This is not conquest, it's standardization. One council, one coinage, one calendar, still many shrines. He redesigns festivals, Panathenaea, codifies games, roots honor, so status competes inside ritual instead of stabbing in alleys. He trims kingship down to something like first citizen, proto-democratic posture, with monarchical muscle in reserve. He stumbles, because leaders do, the whole Hippolytus catastrophe later. Ideals misapplied, blame misassigned, tragedy fully staffed. Theseus ends in exile, or death, depending on your source. Athens keeps his bones, Simon brings them back, because cities bank symbols of origin as collateral for future crises. Theseus proves heroism can be institutionalized, with costs. A good city is a Theseus that learned to stop improvising when other people will absorb the blast radius. If Theseus is the city builder, Jason is the startup founder with a great deck and ruin in the footnotes. His story begins with usurpation. Peleus steals Iolcus's throne from Aeson. Jason grows off-site, mentored by Chiron, because Greece never wastes a good tutor on princes who might matter. When he returns to claim the throne, Peleus deploys a boomerang request. Bring me the golden fleece. It's the classic executive deferral, impossible task as calendar extender. Jason builds a team, the Argonauts, and this is his primary skill, recruitment. Heracles, Orpheus, Castor, and Polydeuces, Atalanta, unless your version disinvites her, a stack of specialists and brand equity. He commissions Argo from Argus with Athena's oversight, a ship with a talking timber from Dodona. Advice embedded in hardware. So far, good leadership. Assemble excellence. Equip with tech that tells the truth. The voyage is a highlight reel of operational hazards. Lemnos, where men are dead and women rule. The crew almost forgets the mission. Desire versus focus. Jason moves them along. Leader lesson: mission drift is human. Leaving is leadership. Harpy-plagued Phineas gets relief via Zetes and Calais. In return he gives the algorithm for the Symplegades, clashing rocks. Release a dove. If it passes, row like your life is a verb. They do. Argo slips through with a crushed stern ornament as a receipt. That's process thinking. Amicus, a bully boxer, gets put down by Polydeuces, no glamour, essential justice. Then Colchis and Medea. Here Jason's strength and flaw cohere. He secures the fleece not by muscle but by outsourcing to genius and love. Medea, priestess of Hecate, motherloads the expedition with competence. She gives Pharmaca to yoke fire-breathing bulls, tricks to sew dragon-teeth warriors and make them kill each other, potion to put the guardian serpent to sleep. Jason executes with her brain in his pocket. It works. That's leadership. If you own it. Jason doesn't. He acts like victory validated him, instead of the partnership. The retreat is bloody. Medea buys their exit by dismembering her brother Apsyrtus. Versions vary on deck, or later as an ambush to delay the pursuit. This is the bill Peleus should have paid. Instead, the moral debt sits on the Argo. Back in Iolcus, Jason delivers the fleece, and Peleus still won't move. Medea fixes it. The boiler room coup. She convinces Peleus's daughters to cut and boil him, promising rebirth. No rebirth occurs. The throne flips to Axus, Jason and Medea are exiled. Translation: a leader who hires ruthlessness owns it. In Corinth, Jason rebrands as respectable. He abandons Medea to marry the king's daughter, political capital over loyalty. He tells himself it's for their children. Medea hears the lie behind the spreadsheet. Her reply is Greek tragedy's blade. She kills the rival bride with a gift that burns, kills her own children. In some versions the city does. Myth keeps the ambiguity to keep your judgment honest, and leaves on a dragon chariot that screams this line: do not use brilliance as a ladder, and kick it away. Jason survives, but the gods don't endorse. Years later, a rotten beam from the Argo falls and kills him. Poetic Osha. The tool he led and failed to honor crushes him while he sleeps under it. Found a death by deferred maintenance. Jason's leadership ledger: strengths, recruiting, delegating to competence, surviving uncertainty, accepting counsel. Fatal flaws: credit hoarding, promise breaking, risk externalization, onto those without political shields. Medea crew. He confuses expedition success with moral success. He thinks delivering the fleece voids debts. Greek myth says deliverables don't erase vows. The Argonauts' mixed ending becomes a mirror for every coalition venture thereafter. You can gather the best, equip them right, navigate chaos, and still destroy your house if you betray the contract that got you there. Leadership is not winning, it's what your wins cost and who pays. Put Theseus and Jason on a table. Theseus cleans roots, kills local tyrannies, centralizes Attica, routinizes ritual, turns heroism into systems. Personal sins, Ariadne, Hippolytus haunt him, but the city survives because he invested his strength into institutions. Jason assembles excellence, achieves the flagship objective, then defaults on relational capital. The institution that could have formed around the Argo never materializes because the leader treats people as consumables, not partners. The Greeks, clinical as surgeons, imprint the lesson onto civic DNA. Your city should be desin in corridors and calendars. Your expeditions must never be Jasonic in marriages and promises. Founders who neglect temples, courts, and oaths get nemesis in human form. Sometimes she wears a crown of ivy and drives dragons. Leadership in this mythology is less charisma and more custodianship. Keep roads safe, rights honest, oaths costly, debt visible, hospitality enforced, monsters managed without turning the city into a maze. Build the habit where glory flows into infrastructure, so the next generation inherits more than anecdotes. The system will test this understanding at scale. A beauty contest will become a supply chain catastrophe. A stolen queen will become a 20-year audit of honor, oath, and appetite. Heroes will shine, sulk, die, return. Gods will meddle and then demand purifications. And a man too clever to die quickly will try to steer home through a world that punishes leaders who win wars but forget how to live in peace. Wars don't start with armies. They start with bad promises and unpaid invoices. The Trojan War is what happens when vanity opens a tab and the world shows up to collect. The fuse is a beauty contest, bound to a contract everyone pretends to forget. Eris, discord, uninvited, throws a golden apple into a wedding inscribed to the fairest. Hera stands for legitimacy, Athena for competence, and Aphrodite for social gravity. Paris, a prince with a shepherd's tan and zero judgment record, is drafted as judge. You cannot adjudicate tamid, divine honor without paying. Hera offers power, Athena offers victory, and Aphrodite offers Helen. Paris chooses a law over governance and strategy. It's not lust, it's mispricing. Helen is married to Menelaus of Sparta under the oath of Tyndareus, where every suitor swore to defend the chosen husband's claim so Greece would not burn over her. That oath is a distributed mutual defense clause. Break it and Zeus Hawkios takes notes. Paris steals Helen with Aphrodite's air cover, and the oath wakes like a trapdoor. Kings who were happy to lose the contest aren't happy to lose face. The summons go out. 1,000 ships is hyperbole. The binding is not. Mobilization comes with compliance checks. Agamemnon calls the muster at Aulis and fails the Artemis audit. Whether a boast, a boar, or a bird omen triggered it, the fix is brutal. Iphigenia must die for the wind to turn. Greek myth refuses cheap piety. Sometimes the altar takes your heart. In one version Artemis swaps in a deer, in another the knife lands. Either way the message is public. You don't get war on credit. Ilium endures a 20-year audit of oaths, pride, and supply chains. The Greeks land because Poseidon permits harbours and Athena tolerates plans. Troy stands because Priam is a grown-up and its walls were engineered by gods at cost. The early action is raids and bargaining, then a plague from Apollo because Agamemnon insulted his priest. The cure is not courage, it is restitution. Agamemnon returns the girl, and then in a petty scale-up, seizes Perseus from Achilles, detonating the most expensive HR problem in literature. Achilles withdraws and the coalition fights with its best engineer on strike. Resources burn, morale decays, and heroes die. The Iliad is honest. Sometimes the biggest threat is ego with a spear in storage. Patroclus tries to patch the gap. He dons Achilles' armor to stop a rout and dies by Hector's spear. Compromised leadership exacts the price from good men. Grief weaponizes Achilles without healing him. He returns, runs hot, and kills Hector in a legality-adjacent fury. Then the poem grows up. Priam comes at night with ransom, kisses the hand that killed his son, and asks for the body. Achilles relents. Pity suspends rage long enough for civilization to breathe. Meanwhile the gods meddle like board members. Hera cheats, Athena coaches, Aphrodite protects her investment, Apollo balances ledgers, Zeus watches the oath economy and permits interventions that keep the game fair enough to instruct. Moira sets constraints neither side can bribe. Stalemate holds because both sides are competent enough. You don't beat good walls with speeches. You beat them with design. Odysseus steps forward with a plan that is both genius and crime, which in Greek often amounts to the same thing. A horse large enough to make flattery look like good sense. Sinton lies professionally. Laocoon tells the truth and gets erased by sea snakes. Divine optics management or priestly tragedy. Take your pick. The Trojans pull the horse inside because love of spectacle is a security hole. Night falls. The belly opens. Doors open with it. Neoptolemus, Achilles' son, butchers Priam at the altar. Sacrilege with receipts. Ajax the Lesser drags Cassandra from Athena's temple and crosses a line that will later drown him. Aeneas escapes with household gods because not every exit is shame. Troy burns. You want catharsis. The Greeks do not get it. Atrocities generate claims that follow victors home like ballast. The Nosdu homecomings become character tests. Agamemnon returns to Clytemnestra, who keeps the memory of Iphigenia, where forgiveness cannot touch it. She and Aegisthus kill him in the bath, and the house of Atreus cycles blood like a cursed pump. Later Orestes kills them, and the Furies chase until Athena convenes Athens' first court. A jury sits, a tie breaks for acquittal. The Erinyes accept new Timmy and become Eumenides the kindly ones. Vengeance converted into law is how a city replaces vendetta. Menelaus and Helen wander, reconcile or perform reconciliation. Marriage is policy, and end in Sparta, where story and silence split the bill. Some say they reach the Isles of the Blessed. The system rewards kings who can absorb scandal back into ritual. Nestor sails home like a man who paid his dues in wisdom up front. Competence and piety produce the happiest line Greek myth knows, uneventful return. Diomedes angers Aphrodite, finds his house turned unfriendly, and emigrates to Italy, stabs social gravity, and love moves out of your city. Ajax the Lesser is wrecked by Athena for Cassandra's blasphemy, and finished by Poseidon. Some crimes only tides teach. Neoptolemos ends in pilgrimage and death at Delphi, because violence at altars boomerangs toward altars. Then the long case Odysseus, whose superpower is applied intelligence, and whose flaw is talking to himself too loudly. He leaves Troy with glory and a ship full of men who think victory flips the universe to easy. The Odyssey is a correction. At Ismarus among the Cicones, they sack a town and stay too long, losing men to reinforcements. Leave after the objective, not after the party. Among the Lotus Eaters, a narcotic erases goals and Odysseus drags his men back. Leadership sometimes means kidnapping your own team from comfort. With Polyphemus the Cyclops, a walking violation of hospitality, Odysseus blinds him with wine and a stake, escapes under rams, and then ruins the victory by taunting with his real name. Poseidon hears and turns 10 years of sea into a joke about pride. Success needs a mute button. Eris's Bag of Winds shows how tools fail under poor information hygiene. The crew opens what should stay sealed, and storms reset progress. In the harbour of the Laestrygonians, cannibals crush ships. Not all risks advertise, so probe before docking. Circe turns men to pigs. Odysseus matches her as an equal and wins terms. They rest for a year that feels like a weekend, because good leadership knows when rest is strategy, and then he departs when purpose wakes. In the underworld, he consults Tiresias because when the map stops working, you ask the dead who remember how consequences align. The constraints are clear. Do not touch the sun's cattle. Control your mouth. Trust Athena when she shows up disguised. The sirens are managed by binding himself to the mast and stopping his crew's ears, plan to be weak and install restraints, while strong, between Scylla and Charybdis. He chooses the smaller loss. Leadership is selective sacrifice with eyes open, not spreadsheet bravado. On Thrinacia, stormbound and low on food, he falls asleep when it matters, and loses the compliance vote. The crew slaughters the forbidden herd. Helios complains to Zeus. Lightning erases the team. Someone has to remember the report, so Odysseus lives. Calypso offers immortality on Ogyges. He says no. And that refusal is identity maintenance, because forever without purpose is death by softness. In Pharmacia, perfect hospitality furnishes perfect exfiltration. He tells his story because narratives buy passage, and he is shipped home asleep with gifts, and a house full of men eating his food and courting his wife under his roof. At Ithaca he doesn't kick the door. He runs counterintelligence. Athena remakes him as a beggar, because low profile gains high signal. He tests the swineherd Eumaeus, and the cowherd Fallacious, calibrates enemies among the suitors, and measures Penelope, who has been running a masterclass in delay with her funeral weaving. The famous bow is a capability test under ritual cover. He strings what no one else can, sends an arrow through axes, and turns a hall back into a court. The slaughter is an atrocity. If you forget Xenia, with Xenia in view, it is enforcement. He spares the minstrel and the herald, the infrastructure for truth, and punishes treacherous maids harshly, and the poem records both ethic and cost. Purification follows. He fumigates the hall with sulphur because miasma is real. He reveals himself to Penelope in a test only their bed can pass, rooted to the house in an olive trunk. Their marriage is not fireworks, it is fit. The suitors' families gather for revenge, and the cycle tilts toward a treed repetition. Athena imposes truce, not sentiment but policy. The city will not be lost to second-order vendetta. Odysseus's ledger balances with winds and design under constraint, alliance with Athena, respect for ritual when it matters, and willingness to disguise until truth is safe. It also lists losses, men killed by his pride or their own, years burned because he wanted the last word with a one-eyed farmer, and household trauma measured in loom time and tears. Even when you succeed, someone you love pays too much. The Trojan cycle leaves 4 non-negotiables. Oaths are architecture, and breaking them draws compound interest from the cosmos. Hospitality is national security. Good Xenia moves intelligence and mercy, while bad Xenia lights cities. Pride is gravity. You can aim above it, but you cannot repeal it. Return is part of war. If you cannot come home clean, legally, ritually, psychologically, you didn't win, you just postponed the bill. With Troy sacked and homecomings graded, Greek myth makes its last necessary turn, from battles of bodies to debates about souls. What happens under the earth isn't a horror show. It's a ledger with rooms. Some rites promise gentler outcomes, because mortals learn to suffer intelligently. Tragedians will turn courtrooms into cathedrals. Philosophers will turn myths into arguments. The underworld will stop being only a rumor and become a map. Mortals can navigate with passwords and grain. Empires fall, cities rot, theaters empty. What stays is the ritual that teaches people how to carry grief without inventing monsters to blame. The endgame of Greek myth is not a bigger battle. It is a map of what happens when breath leaves, and a set of passwords for living so that leaving doesn't terrify you into stupidity. The underworld is a ledger, not a dungeon. Hermes Psychopompos, neither thunder nor poetry, escorts the dead. That choice is policy. The god of roots, contracts and messages handles the most fragile transport in existence. He walks you to the banks of Akron, or Styx if your region prefers, and Sharon Rose grumbling like any unionized ferryman who's seen everything. If you weren't buried properly, or your people skimped on rites, you wait. Liminality becomes penalty. Greek myth welds piety to logistics. Take care of the dead, or chaos charges you waiting fees. You pass the gates, where a dog that is 3 dogs ensures the flow is one way. Inside, the underworld is infrastructure for consequence rather than hell with decor. The asphodel meadow spreads as default, a long dusk for average lives, not punishment but equilibrium. Elysium glows as a cul-de-sac for the rare who met excellence without making everyone else pay too much for it, sometimes upgrading to the Isles of the Blessed, for those admitted to the fast lane of renewal. Tartaros lies deeper for maximum severity sentences, where cosmic crimes receive cosmic responses, the Titans bound, Sisyphus pushing, Tantalus thirsting with a full glass laughing at him. These figures are not boogeymen, but case law carved into geology. The fields of punishment handle civic failures, scaled to fit the offender, with Ixion strapped to a wheel for hospitality vandalism, and the Danaids pouring water through bottomless jars for weaponizing marriage. Every myth here footnotes the constitution you met earlier. The judges are Minos, Rhadamanthys, and Aeacus, kings in life and adjudicators in death. Why kings? Because the Greeks knew a brutal thing: if you want justice to scale, draft those who have tasted public consequence. Their rulings are not creative writing. They sought the afterlife is an archival system with penalties for corruption. Rivers are protocols rather than scenery. The Styx binds oaths, and even gods do downtime if they break one. Lethe deletes memory for souls tired of weight. Mnemosyne in Orphic variants becomes the anti-Lether, choose memory and keep your thread. Philogathon burns with passion, fury, or purification. Cocytus weeps for incomplete closure. Acheron carries transitions. 5 flows speak one thesis. Your state is largely what you drink. Hades is not a villain. He runs the registry. Persephone is not a hostage. She is seasonal sovereignty. 6 months of absence, 6 months of presence, an annual training program in how to live with loss without worshipping it. When Orpheus appears with a lyre and a thesis that pity should rewrite policy, they try it. The rule that stops him, do not look back, is not cruelty. Trust is part of every release. He fails. The story survives to teach you why risk protocols always include the line about not checking every 5 seconds. The mysteries offer licensed hope. Public cults teach civic hygiene. Mysteries teach how to die without panicking. Eleusis and Orphism are the masterclasses. The Eleusinian mysteries pivot on Demeter and Persephone. You know the myth. Kyrie is taken, Demeter stops the grain. The world starves until compromise is negotiated. The festival turns this into a curriculum. Initiates walk from Athens to Eleusis carrying torches, light you can hold. They reenact the search. Fast, drink kykeon, enter the telesterion, see something and hear something, and come out with an improved expectation. The promise is not immortality. It is that death will not humiliate you. Crops know cycles, so can you. The civic genius is that Eleusis is inclusive. Women, men, enslaved people with permission, and foreigners. A polis that lets everyone practice hope, build social weather more resilient than any wall. Public officials are involved because the grain goddess's rights are a supply chain religion. Feed people, soothe them, tax them, ask them to fight when required. Repeat. Piety here is functional. Orphic paths work differently. Orphism is a DIY kit for souls who want more than a decent afterparty. Its mythic backbone says Dionysus Sigrius was torn by Titans, that Athena saved the heart, and Zeus reconstituted him, and that humans formed from the Titans' ashes after Zeus vaporized them. We are a mix, Titan stain plus divine spark, which explains why we're brilliant and awful before breakfast. The remedy is purification across lifetimes. Diet codes, hymn codes, and gold tablets buried with the dead that read like UX instructions for Hades. I am a child of earth and starry sky. Give me to drink of Mnemosyne, not Lethe. Memory becomes liberation, and identity continuity survives death and return. Where Eleusis stabilizes the city, Orphism individualizes salvation. It's an early experiment in portable holiness. Keep your rules, keep your lyrics, keep your map. The trade-off is rigor. Freedom always charges fees. Then philosophy arrives and myths learn to wear arguments. The poets built a cosmos. You can walk in, the philosophers build one you can debate. It's not a coup so much as versioning. Presocratics swap gods for principles. Heraclitus calls fire process and Prometheus becomes flux. Parmenides suspects change, and Demeter answers with the bedrock beneath the plough. Empedocles names love and strife where others say Aphrodite and Ares in lab coats. Plato keeps myth as didactic hardware. The myth of Ares in the Republic reads like an Orphic wiki in which souls choose lots, drink forgetting, and reincarnate while philosophers try to remember more and choose better. He doesn't need Hades to be GPS accurate. He needs citizens to act as if accountability were a law of nature. In the Phaedo, philosophy becomes practice for dying well. Aristotle shifts the focus to ethics under sunlight. Habits, moderation tell us domesticating myth rather than cancelling it. Tragedy becomes therapy. Catharsis is regulated. Dionysus. Feel it, frame it, and go home. Functional. Meris and later rationalizers say gods are historical kings with good PR. The Greeks tolerate the hypothesis because they remember what we forget. Truth wears costumes. Rome remixes and extends the reach because administration travels well. The portfolios are renamed Zeus to Jupiter, Hera to Juno, Athena to Minerva, Ares to Mars with a civic upgrade, Hades to Pluto because branding matters, Ceres to Mercury with commerce squared, Aphrodite to Venus, and the pantheon is municipalized. Pontifices and augurs manage the sacred bureaucracy. Treaties are sworn by Jupiter at Capitoline altars. The Vestal fire becomes Hestia 2.0. The empire lives on Rhodes Ceres would autograph. When Christianity arrives, it absorbs the machinery, courts, bishops, creeds, calendars, and repurposes the habit of oaths, processions, and festival firmware. Myth's bones hold new flesh. Theatre keeps civics sharp by putting masks on. Tragedy is how Athens teaches adults to sit still and think feelings into law. Aeschylus's Oresteia converts blood feud into jury trial on stage. Sophocles' Antigone interrogates divine law against decree. Euripides drags household ethics under stadium lights. Comedy in Aristophanes mocks policy failures, so the Dionysia becomes OSHA for democracy. Vent pressure, update scripts, and don't let rage choose mayors. The stage keeps citizens literate in consequence. Strip away the thundersuits and a constitution of feelings remains. Oath persists as architecture. Even when there's no visible sticks, hospitality functions as network security. Miasma becomes our recognition that harm spreads if unconfessed. Sanctuary serves as a valve where violence cools into procedure. Fate is the budget constraint you respect before it humiliates you. Nemesis is the rebalancer that hates spreadsheets with lies. Hope Elpis is not an opiate, but a discipline. Keep planting, keep grieving intelligently, keep law on speed dial, and the underworld endures as either meadow or math with the same ethic. Live so your city would bother to remember your name correctly. The afterlife of myth is you. These stories are not fossils, they are operational code. Every time you refuse to humiliate a guest, you consult Zeus Senios. Every time you keep a promise you could weasel out of, Hawkos smiles and your future gets simpler. When you schedule catharsis in art, the gym or song instead of detonating it at strangers, you obey Dionysus with a calendar. When you push your anger through a court instead of your cousin, you graduate the Erinyes into Eumenides. When you name the thing that scares you and approach it indirectly with the right tools, you repeat Perseus. When you divert the river instead of firing the janitor, you repeat Heracles. When you build checklists so your sails aren't black, you repair Theseus. When you tie yourself to the mast before the sirens wake, you become Odysseus on purpose. The Greeks refused to lie about cost. The grain returns because a daughter leaves half the year. The city holds because someone wrote oaths with teeth. The hero shines and then pays, or someone close pays. The gods err and then submit to purification. The dead receive sorting without spectacle. The living receive mysteries without anesthesia. After wars and monsters and weddings and crimes, the entire story of Greek mythology lands on an adult sentence. A world is survivable when power consents to law, when grief consents to ritual, and when courage consents to tools. If you want to be blessed, don't barter with gods, engineer your habits. If you want your name to travel, make sure it is attached to useful repairs. The afterlife of myth isn't under the ground. It's the space inside institutions and choices where these old patterns still do their slow, stern work.